Time now for the business news with Brian Quinn. Good morning, Brian.
Hello.
You're starting out in the United States with President Trump disbanding two business councils.
Well, as we've seen the president announcing via Twitter on Wednesday that he's ending both his manufacturing council and his strategy and policy forum. Those are two high-level White House business advisory councils. It's become clear, however, that the decision wasn't necessarily his, as U.S. business leaders seek to distance themselves from Trump. Mario Sofos reports.
A president who pledged to bring the mind of a businessman to politics. But now, his reputation amongst corporate leaders is dwindling. Announcing via Twitter the end of both the Manufacturing Council and the Strategy and Policy Forum, President Donald Trump fought to regain control of a situation rapidly veering off course. The statement comes after several business leaders resigned from the councils on Wednesday, citing the president's ambiguous reaction to the racially charged clashes in Charlottesville. Among those who have left are the CEOs for Merck, Under Armour and Intel. The councils were created by Mr. Trump as a part of his campaign to save American industry, though some see the scrapping as a defense against businesses which are gradually undermining his economic legitimacy.
Trump basically got ahead of the inevitable and basically said, I'm ending the councils before the CEOs could do it for him. But that's where this was headed. This was not going to be a sustainable situation. And if anything, this prevents there from being this sort of drip of one CEO after another coming out and embarrassing the president.
Now the concern for shareholders and consumers in the US is a president who wishes to boost economic growth with fewer financial allies than ever before.
Now, Brian, that upheaval coming as the U.S. is in the midst of some very important trade negotiations.
Well, the first day of renegotiations on the North American Free Trade Agreement between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico wrapped up Wednesday in Washington as protesters gathered at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City to denounce what they see as the trade agreement's damaging effects on indigenous people and small farmers in their country. Since the signing of the deal in 1994, Mexico has sent nearly 85% of its exports north to the U.S. and Canada. It wants to hold on to that kind of market access. The Trump administration, however, holding firm to its line that the deal has destroyed U.S. manufacturing jobs and created a wide trade deficit. But Mexico's economic secretary says it's actually helping the American economy. Let's take a listen here.
Mexico isn't a part of the problem. We're part of the solution. Through the integration of our supply chains, we've managed to keep North America competitive against other regions of the world. The question that we should be asking is what would have happened without this integration, and if the competitiveness that Mexico brings to North America didn't exist. I think the impact from competition with Asia would have been more radical and disastrous on jobs. And I don't hide that we see things differently.
Brian, how are the markets doing this morning?
Well, Asian index is actually seeing some benefit from that shakeup in Trump's business councils as a rally in the value of the U.S. dollar was halted by turmoil there. Gains of over 0.5% on both the Kospi in Seoul and the Shanghai Composite. Some losses on Hong Kong's Hang Seng and Tokyo's Nikkei, however, as auto and financial stocks track downward. Shares here in Europe seeing red across the board with losses of at least 0.33% on London's FTSE 100, the CAC 40 in Paris, and the Frankfurt DAX. Well, let's take a look at some more of today's top business headlines. Ryanair is accusing the German government of complicity in a conspiracy as Air Berlin goes bankrupt. The British low-cost carrier says Germany is conspiring to help Lufthansa acquire Air Berlin's fleet, still running routes after a €150 million government loan. Air Berlin declared bankruptcy on Tuesday following years of plummeting customer figures. Ireland has rejected an EU demand that it collect €13 billion in back taxes from Apple. The Irish government maintains that Apple and other tech giants complied with the law when declaring European revenue under Ireland's lower corporate tax rate. The European Commission ruled last year that the arrangement amounted to illegal state aid. And Union Pacific is cutting 750 jobs by mid-September. The iconic American Railway says 500 management jobs and 250 railway working jobs will be removed as it pursues further cost-cutting. Union Pacific is looking to trim expenses by $350 to $400 million this year as a boom in natural gas has hurt coal transport revenues.
And finally from you, Brian, one icon of British life looks set to, well, become obsolete.
That's right. The UK is hanging up on one of its most famous symbols, the red telephone box. British Telecom, which owns and operates the famous booths, is set to remove around 20,000 of them due to lack of use. The boxes were introduced in 1926. Over the years, as mobile phones have increased in popularity, a number of them have been transformed into miniature libraries, coffee shops, and even pubs in an effort to keep them relevant. But BT says it's losing £6 million per year keeping the booths in service, so it's taking them out. And despite the fall in use, 33,000 calls per day still do go out through those famous red boxes. Fortunately, some of them will still be left for those who want a taste of that nostalgia and pick up the old phone.
Well, as long as there are 2 double-decker buses rolling around the streets, I think people will be fine. Thank you very much for that, Brian Quinn there with The Business.